Hello history lovers, today we're diving into the dark corners of history. But what if some of the things we read in history books are just big fat lies? We're talking about those historical myths we all think are true. You know, like that game we played as kids? Telephone? Yeah, history can be a lot like that. So buckle up because we're about to embark on a journey to uncover the biggest lies in history and explore how they spread. Let's start with a classic from ancient Greece, the legendary Trojan horse. You know the story. The Greeks, unable to penetrate the impenetrable walls of Troy after a decade of war, resort to a cunning plan. They build a giant wooden horse, leave it as a gift for the Trojans, and sail away, pretending to retreat. The Trojans, believing the horse to be a symbol of victory, bring it inside their city walls. And then, bam! Out pop Greek soldiers hidden inside the horse's belly, like some ancient Greek clown car, and they proceed to wreak havoc, ultimately leading to the fall of Troy. But is there any truth to it? Well, here's the thing. While the Trojan War is generally considered a real historical event, the Trojan horse itself is a bit more slippery. The main source for the Trojan horse story is Virgil's Aeneid, written centuries after the supposed events. And even Virgil himself presents it as a rumor, a story passed down through generations. So what are we to make of this? Was the Trojan horse simply a later invention, a way to spice up the already dramatic story of the Trojan War? We may never know for sure. Okay, let's fast forward a few centuries and tackle another historical misconception, the so-called Dark Ages. This period in European history, roughly from the 5th to the 15th centuries, often gets a bad rap. It's portrayed as a time of intellectual stagnation, superstition, and widespread ignorance. Basically, a historical black hole. But here's the thing, the Dark Ages weren't so dark after all. It's true that Europe experienced significant upheaval after the fall of the Roman Empire. But while Europe was going through its own transitions, other parts of the world were flourishing. The Islamic Golden Age, for example, saw an explosion of scientific and cultural advancements. From mathematics and astronomy to medicine and philosophy, Islamic scholars were pushing the boundaries of human knowledge. Meanwhile in the East, the Byzantine Empire, the continuation of the Roman Empire in the East, kept the flame of classical learning alive. So, the next time you hear someone talk about the Dark Ages, remember this: history is never black and white. Let's move on to a historical figure who's often associated with a certain height complex, Napoleon Bonaparte. We've all heard the jokes, right? The image of Napoleon as a short, power-hungry dictator is ingrained in popular culture. But as with many historical facts, this one is based on a lie. Napoleon wasn't actually short. In fact, he was around 5 foot 6 inches tall, which was average height for men in France at the time. So where did this idea of a vertically challenged Napoleon come from? Well, it seems our friends across the English Channel might have had something to do with it. British cartoonists had a field day depicting Napoleon as a tiny tyrant, compensating for his lack of stature with an oversized ego. The image of a diminutive Napoleon became so pervasive that it stuck, even though it was completely false. Let's travel back in time to ancient Egypt, to the reign of one of history's most iconic figures, Cleopatra. She's often remembered for her legendary beauty, her seductive charm, her relationships with powerful Roman generals like Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. But was Cleopatra truly as beautiful as legend has it? Well, historical accounts paint a more complex picture. While some ancient writers did describe Cleopatra as physically attractive, they often emphasized her intelligence, her political acumen, and her captivating personality as her most alluring qualities. Cleopatra was a shrewd strategist, a skilled diplomat, and a master of persuasion. She ruled Egypt for over 2 decades, navigating complex political waters and holding her own against powerful Roman rivals. She was fluent in multiple languages, a patron of the arts and sciences, and a savvy ruler who understood the importance of image and propaganda. So, while Cleopatra might have been physically attractive, it seems her intelligence, her political skills, and her undeniable charisma were her most potent weapons. Here's a historical myth that just refuses to go away. The belief that people in the Middle Ages thought the earth was flat. You've probably heard it before. The image of medieval peasants cowering in fear, convinced they'll sail off the edge of the world if they venture too far. But here's the thing, this is utter nonsense. The idea that educated people in the Middle Ages believed in a flat Earth is a 19th century invention, a way to portray earlier eras as ignorant and superstitious. In reality, the spherical shape of the Earth has been known since ancient Greece. Aristotle, Ptolemy, and other Greek scholars not only argued for a spherical Earth, but also provided evidence for it based on observations of the stars and the way ships disappeared over the horizon. This knowledge was passed down through the Roman Empire and into the Middle Ages. So why does this myth persist? Well, it's a simple, easy-to-grasp story that reinforces a narrative of progress. Let's delve into the realm of wartime propaganda with a particularly bizarre example. The claim that Adolf Hitler had only one testicle. This rumor, which circulated during World War II, is a prime example of how propaganda is used to dehumanize and ridicule enemies. The Allies, eager to undermine Hitler's image and demoralize German troops, spread all sorts of rumors about him. Some were relatively tame, focusing on his supposed vegetarianism or his love of Disney movies, but others, like the one-testicle myth, were far more outlandish and demeaning. There's absolutely no evidence to support this claim. It likely originated from a British marching song that mocked Nazi leaders, and it quickly spread through Allied propaganda channels. The goal was simple, to portray Hitler as physically flawed, even ridiculous, and to erode his authority in the eyes of his followers. This tactic, while undeniably effective in demonizing enemies, is a stark reminder of how easily truth can be manipulated during times of conflict. Let's raid the shores of history and tackle a misconception about one of history's most iconic warrior cultures, the Vikings. Picture a Viking in your mind. What do you see? A fierce warrior with a horned helmet, right? Well, I hate to break it to you, but the horned helmet is a historical inaccuracy. Real Viking helmets were simple, practical, and most importantly, hornless. The image of Vikings sporting horned helmets is a 19th century invention, popularized by romantic artists and opera composers who wanted to create a more dramatic and imposing image of these Scandinavian raiders. The horned helmet myth, while visually striking, is a prime example of how popular culture can distort historical reality. Let them eat cake. These infamous words, often attributed to Marie Antoinette, Queen of France during the French Revolution, have become synonymous with callous indifference to the plight of the poor. But did Marie Antoinette actually utter this phrase? The answer, in short, is no. The quote, "let them eat cake," is a classic example of a historical misattribution. While it's true that Marie Antoinette was known for her lavish lifestyle and her disconnect from the realities of life for ordinary French citizens, there's no evidence that she ever said these words. In fact, the phrase, "let them eat brioche," a type of enriched bread, appears in Jean-Jacques Rousseau's Confessions, written years before Marie Antoinette even arrived in France. Rousseau attributes the quote to a great princess, but he doesn't name her. Over time, the quote became associated with Marie Antoinette, likely due to her reputation for extravagance and her unpopularity among the French populace. So, while Marie Antoinette might not be entirely blameless for her role in the events leading up to the French Revolution, the "let them eat cake" quote is a historical fabrication. Let's sail into uncharted waters and challenge a deeply ingrained historical narrative, the idea that Christopher Columbus discovered America. This narrative, while deeply embedded in our history books and our collective consciousness, is fundamentally flawed. The Americas, of course, were not empty lands awaiting European discovery. They were already inhabited by diverse and sophisticated indigenous populations who had been living there for thousands of years, developing their own cultures, languages, and ways of life. Furthermore, Columbus wasn't even the first European to reach the Americas. Viking explorers, led by Leif Erikson, had reached North America centuries earlier, establishing a short-lived settlement at L'Anse aux Meadows in Newfoundland, Canada. So, why do we cling to the Columbus discovery narrative? Well, it's a story that has been used to justify European colonialism and to create a Eurocentric view of history. So, there you have it, some of the biggest lies in history debunked. From the Trojan horse to Christopher Columbus, we've seen how myths and misinformation can take root and spread, often obscuring the more complex and fascinating truth. By questioning what we think we know, by digging deeper, by exploring multiple perspectives, we can gain a richer and more accurate understanding of the past. If you enjoyed this video, Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more historical deep dives.